everyone. Welcome back to Medicine for These Times. I'm so honored to finally have my friend Mary Isis Diehl in with us here today. Hi, Mary. Thanks for being here finally.
I'm glad to be here too. Sometimes it takes a while to align
I know.
these things and
I know. I know. I was like, at first it took me like a year to even ask you. And then I was like, I got to get her on here. And then, just life scheduling. But here we are, divine timing. I'm so excited to get to know you and hear your story and share your unique medicine. So let me tell the audience a little about your background. So Mary is a singer, song weaver, music producer, ritual artist, ceremonial facilitator, and transformational coach based in Northern California and the Big Island of Hawaii. Her lyrical expressions of the universal human experience embrace the mystical, evoke remembrance of our true purpose and meaning in life, and deeply honor the unique path of transformation we are all on. Guided by a mission to inspire and awaken connection with nature and spirit, she's honored to share her services of sacred music, mentorship, visionary song, weaving circles, music production, ceremonial facilitation, and coaching for transformational recovery and psychedelic medicine integration. She offers seasonal online integrative courses as well as in person transformational retreats. Her other passions and interests are crafting botanical products, intuitive work with honeybees, and end of life care support. Mary, let's get into it. I know one of the things I've connected with you online about are the bees.
yes.
And of course, I dream of coming out to Hawaii and playing with bees and doing this amazing work with you. But yeah, I don't really know much about your background. I know some of your music. I know we crossed so many paths in this industry, but
Mhm.
yeah, how did you get started onto this path? And I'm always curious, like, what other path were you on? And I always make jokes like, were you once a corporate attorney or
Never.
an accountant? I know, right?
Yeah. Oh gosh, what a rich question. When I think about my upbringing and then I moved to Hawaii at the age of 12, so that was a really significant shift. I moved from California with my family to the Big Island, and when I think about my childhood and like where it's led me to today, it seemed pretty magical. And um, I've always just had this real deep connection with nature and the magical spiritual realms. And so at a very young age, when I moved to Hawaii, I just was drawn to exploring more of these other realities, these other dimensions through plant medicines, through the mushrooms. And I definitely had a lot of my musical gifts come through living on the islands, and that's where I started just experimenting with recording my own music. And it wasn't until I moved back to California where I really started to anchor in doing more of this work with ceremonial work and really focusing 100% on the music. And in about an 8-year period while living up north in Humboldt, I recorded something like 8 albums, just like really focused. I had a lot of time. I was very blessed to have a lot of space and time, which involved a lot of nature connection and just channeling that into the music. And so now I'm kind of at a place where I'm not recording as much music. A lot of it's out there already, but I'm just like more interested in exploring these new avenues of working more like one on one, doing the coaching, and yeah, like the honeybees, like that's kind of a new thing. I started working with some sisters in Hawaii with co-leading these intuitive beekeeping retreats, which has been super magical, just tapping into the mysteries and the teachings that the honeybees have for us and humanity at this time. And yeah, it's kind of like a very multifaceted path, but that's how I've always kind of liked it. And yeah, there's a lot of different directions I could go there, but
Yeah.
gist of it.
No, I love hearing it. So I'm curious, when you were on the path of the music and then, moved around a lot, there was probably a point where maybe there was kind of this awareness of like, okay, there's this traditional path, at least here in America, where a lot of people, it's like you graduate from school and then you go to college and you get a job.
Yeah.
That's how I was raised, especially it's like, I was raised in the Bay Area in California, and it was kind of like everybody just did that. But yeah, what led you to kind of have that freedom to forge your own path, or was it just kind of your family unit, your upbringing, or did you ever feel that pressure of like, well, I need to go do this and that, you know?
I love this question because I actually didn't really have many examples in my own family of like entrepreneurship. So it was kind of, there was this kind of pressure in a way of like, well, what are you going to do to make money? And I did go through the college training, and I thought I was going to be a teacher. I thought, oh, I'll be like a
Mm.
high school teacher because I love teaching biology. And so like that was my study in college. And then I started working a little bit in the schools, like in Waldorf school and in a charter school. And I thought I'll go back to get the teaching degree. I'll take some time off school, but I never ended up doing that. And that's when I started like delving more into music and sharing my music. And then I took a year and moved to Boston, which was a big expansion point in just, yeah, expanding my world. It was like the first time kind of flying the nest and like going to the whole other side of the country and getting a lot more exposure to music out there and a different type of culture. And I actually worked at Harvard University for a short spell as like a lab technician. So I'm like, oh, I'm using my degree, like, but basically just working with plants while I was there in the evolutionary biology department. And so that was kind of the coolest job I think I had, where I was using my degree. But other than that, I've worked in schools a bit. And then about, it's been 10 years now that I haven't really had a real job where I was clocking in. So it's been a bit of a challenge, like kind of doing this on my own. I've had a couple mentors, probably some people, were like some dear sisters of mine that have really done well in the entrepreneur world, and just kind of learning where I can learn. And it takes a lot of discipline, of time, and yeah, it's challenging. There's times where I'm just like, maybe I'll just get a job and I know, where the income's coming from, but it's so rewarding to be using my gifts in this way, and then having the freedom, right, to like travel and like just it's a very blessed life. I'm really grateful, and it's definitely really challenging.
Yeah. What was the post? One of my clients actually shared it yesterday, a post about if you really want to know God, be an entrepreneur or something like that, or if you want to learn how to trust God. I'm like, oh my God, this is definitely the hardest, most challenging, and deeply spiritual path I think anybody could be on, is really just listening to their heart and following their purpose and whatever's
Hmm.
channeling through them. And I'm sure, especially as a musician, it's there are musicians that great do well, but the whole industry has changed the way people make money.
Yeah.
There's the touring, and then there was of course like a few years where things were a little off. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious, when did the plant medicine work come in? Like, was it before the
Mhm.
music, or during the music, or after, or
Mm.
was it connected to the music?
100% connected. Yes. Ah. Mm. So I have always been musically inclined since I was a young child. I was making up songs, and my mom tells me I've been singing before I could talk. So I've always been catching melodies. And so that's definitely a gift. And it only really became amplified and became like an integration tool really for the plant medicine work, and where I just began using this gift of song to integrate these beautiful insights as much as I could into words, and like integrating, beautiful affirmational type messages into the songs. So as I started beginning like assisting in the ceremonial world, probably about um 12 years ago, 13 years ago, yeah, the songs definitely started coming through more and more. And I really see that, like, especially with medicines like ayahuasca, like how it almost creates more singers and musicians, because it just opens up your creative channel. And that could be the case for a lot of the medicines, but that was the one for me that really, uh, like, where this just really wove together naturally. Hmm.
Yeah, and I want to get into that a little bit more because Even earlier today, there was something that came across, and I was like, God, like, because I'm one of those people. It's like I sang when I was a kid, then I was shut down. And
Mhm.
then I kind of refound it later in life, and have been kind of working through all the trauma of having my voice basically muzzled for so many years. And
Mm.
now I'm starting to, like you mentioned, catch songs. It's like I have songs come through and then I lose them very quickly, and I'm like, why is it that some people just catch them and like like, and I have them come
Mm.
through, and sometimes in dreams, like asleep,
Mhm.
but then it's like, how do you get it from there into this reality?
Yeah.
And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people are starting to experience that and are like, okay, what do we do?
Well, there's technical tools, really. I mean, and also things like recorders are really helpful for having by the bedside because dream songs come to me as well, and it's helpful to have the little handheld recorders where, before you even open your eyes, you just kind of like whisper what you can remember into the microphone, and yeah, the songs can come when you least expect it, like when you're on your drive or,
Yeah.
on a walk out in nature, and it really does, help to record it. I mean, that's kind of the tool I use. I have so many, like, little song seeds in my voice memos app, and, I'll revisit it, and then where they really get anchored, though, is, like, when I actually sing them in front of people, or when I share them in a song circle or even in ceremony. It's just like that then it's like they're truly birthed, into the material realms for other ears to hear. So, yeah, I encourage you to catch those
I
songs,
know.
like start to record them and see what happens.
And I'm sure a lot of people like me are sitting here going like, what? Like, I still have that fear. It's like I can sing. I'm much more comfortable, but that self-doubt, it's so interesting because I am so
Mm.
confident in other areas. But when it comes to
Mhm.
something like writing a song, which I've done multiple times and then written it and channeled it and then never showed it to anybody. That was it. It was like,
Yeah.
no way, I am not, which is totally a limiting belief. Like, I am not a musician. I am not a singer. I even make jokes
Mm.
about in my next life, I will come back as a musician. But I
Mm.
think that's why this world needs so many people like you, like encouraging
Mm.
people to share their voice and get out there.
Mhm.
Because it's time. It's really important to know that we all have this creative potential. But I'm
Yeah.
curious, do you hear this a lot from people that you work with, that people are just so shut down in their voice and like
Mhm.
scared and
Yeah.
want to sing, but never feel good enough or don't feel like a musician?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Absolutely. It's kind of one of the most common fears people have of speaking or singing in front of people. When I first, working with someone who's just starting to open up their voice, for instance, it's just really helpful to just do very simple practices, even just humming, like regarding your voice actually as a healing instrument that it is, because really this is a tool for our nervous system regulation. I mean, even if we're just humming or like toning, that's the start, and so it's where I begin with just vocal opening practices and also nervous system regulation. So I like to bring in EFT, like tapping, and just even using our words and like speaking the feelings out loud just to like clear any energetic blockages around the voice to begin with. Yeah.
So good. Yeah, I do have to say I have fully noticed the days where I sing or chant, because I have a chanting practice and toning. The days where I do it, I feel better, and the days where I don't, I feel less better. So
Mhm.
it's totally that nervous system regulation, like you
Mhm.
said. I even woke up the other day and I was like, wow, can I declare my nervous system fully healed? Because it just is such a different world than where it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And I know the voice work and this vibrational work has so much to do with it. I really believe that this is
Yeah.
the future medicine. Like I've done a lot of work with some friends of mine, then I have some clients teaching this and doing this kind of work. And I've interviewed, like people like you, like Nessie Gomez, and some other people who are kind of in this sound world. And it's
Mhm.
just so amazing how deep and how healing it is. And
Mhm.
this whole story that so many of us have around like not being good or not sounding good. I mean,
Mhm.
it's, this is where we need people like you to inspire others that this is a healing
Mm.
tool, that this is important.
Yeah.
I love it. I actually, just so you know, I had my first sting of the year last week. And when she stung me, I actually just let it like come fully in. I was like, let me see how long I can leave the stinger in. Like I want to
Wow.
feel this medicine. Yeah, I've never been able to do that. And I felt it until it got to the point where it was like, okay. And then when I went in and took the stinger out and like put some clay on it, I had a full song just totally channel through me. Yeah, it was like the bee sting
Wow.
song, but it was
Wow.
gone in like an instant.
Yeah, the medicine for the
Just
moment.
oh, and I was like, "Oh my god."
Where did she
So
sting you?
it was like my right shoulder,
Okay.
yeah, whatever
Mhm.
between my
Yeah.
shoulder and my chest. Probably on the heart line somewhere.
Mm. Mhm.
Fascinating this work. But I will try that recorder thing. I just never think to do that.
Yeah, and I asked you where the bee stung you because oftentimes they'll go to a spot in the body where like you need the medicine. It's interesting. I hear this from my beekeeping friends all the time, like where they'll get stung in places where they're like struggling, and it's just like it brings the medicine into those places of the body. Yeah.
I believe it. It's so fascinating. I totally believe it. And now that I think about it, when it was starting to come really through, I could feel like numbness in a finger, and this finger has had a hard time healing for the last few months. And
Uh-huh.
maybe it's like the good anti-inflammatory medicine she gave me.
Uh-huh.
But let me ask, before we go on to some of the work that you do, I'm curious if you could share about either your first medicine experience that you feel like was like really transformational on your path, or a significant one that maybe kind of guided you on your path. Like, was there a particular one or moment that you remember that really
Hmm.
like did it, that you would say was like the one experience
Oh gosh.
or the
That's
first?
kind of hard to say, but it just when you asked that question, I immediately went to like the first time. And
Yeah.
so the very first time communing with any mind altering consciousness expanding medicine was with mushrooms. And this was in my youth. I was very curious as a young teenager, and I was out in nature and had someone with me that knew more about it. And we went to the cow pasture, and it was like they were wild growing Hawaiian
Wow.
psychedelic mushrooms. And that was my first experience. Yeah, with any kind of consciousness alteration. And it was probably to date the most powerful mushroom experience that I've had. And I view that as an initiation for sure. It's like kind of where I had the desire to explore other states of consciousness and just like what's beyond the veil, and the veils were open from that. And it was kind of like in a way, kind of like a rites of passage. I was like maybe just turned 14 years old, and and it was kind of like the whole journey was like this. The theme was just like kind of loss of innocence, or just yeah, embracing. Like I had a lot of visions of like my childhood, and just like coming into like this next phase of life, into like young adulthood. And now that I think about that too, it's interesting because now I'm like kind of into this next phase of like entering into my more like wise woman crone years. Like hormones are shifting, and yeah, it's just interesting to reflect back, like, gosh, how long ago that was now. And now I'm like entering into this new phase of life. And that's been quite a journey, actually, like feeling into this ripening time I'm in. Hmm.
A blink of an eye, right?
Yeah.
I totally hear you. My first experience was also 14, and it was just that moment of realizing like, wait a second, there's so much more that we're not being told, that
Yeah.
I'm not being shown. And it was, I always look at these medicines as showing us this potential, this kind of limitless potential of what our hearts can do and what we're here for. And I still think, who knows? Like, we don't really know the capacity of what's possible, because it's
Mm,
limitless, and it's just this beautiful, amazing mystery. So
mhm,
let's talk a little bit more about the work that you're up to now. You mentioned ritual, end of life work, the
mm.
bee work, coaching. Yeah, what's been most alive for where you've been at recently and where you're heading into? Like, what is kind of pulling you the most with your work right now?
Yeah, so I'd say it's been a year now that I got really clear with, and I know this evolves over time as an entrepreneur, but I got really clear and was able to kind of like encapsulate like my core message. And it just really has to do with, I'll just say it, transformational recovery and integration through
Mm.
nature, ritual, and sacred sound. So it just like really encapsulates like all the things that I'm passionate about that I really feel are the keys and super helpful for like reconnecting us with our true selves and helping us to like integrate this ceremony of life. So nature, I'm super feeling passionate about just helping people to get more connected with nature, and that includes, their own bodies, and seeing how I can support people with living a life with more wellness and just more conscious of the things they're even putting in their body. And ritual is has been something like even before I knew what I was doing as a child, like creating altar spaces and like magical like rituals. I didn't even know what I was doing, but it's really a tool for connecting us more deeper with life. And I love to share and create rituals in the group space as well. Like I've been starting to lead my own ceremonies, and I incorporate the despacho ritual. You're probably familiar with despachos. And I went through a training and initiation into the Pachacuti Mesa tradition a few years back and learned this beautiful process. It's kind of like a prayer bundle building communal process where people are speaking out loud their prayers as they're making these offerings of reciprocity to all of the spirits of nature that are supporting our lives. And it becomes this beautiful like mandala shape of offerings on this piece of paper, and it's a beautiful process. So I love offering that ritual in my ceremonies, and then that gets like offered to the fire. And then the sacred sound is just supporting people with, again, opening up their voices, bringing their own songs through, and that can just literally be as simple as like a word or affirmation that they might sing. And that's a tool for integration. So I work a lot in the ceremonial spaces, and if we're not actually bringing these insights into our life and like changing our lives through our actions, and through the songs we sing too, and just how we're like repatterning and rewiring ourselves, then like what's the point of all of these ceremonies? So like transformation is just like what wakes, leads me to do the work I do. I'm like, that's what we're here to do. We're here to grow and transform. Yeah.
Mm. And you mentioned, the most powerful integration tools there are. It's like right in front of us everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in the city either. And I know this because I used to live in New York City when I started working with medicine.
Mm,
And it'd be like this one tree in the middle of the sidewalk with the one bird. There's still a way to really connect in.
that's right.
But I was just talking to someone about this the other week about this. There's so many people out there that I think are very new to a lot of this work and jumping in and like just going full force, like very kind of masculine energy with like, I need to heal. So I'm just going to do like 20,000 medicines all at once, like back to back to back. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and what you mentioned here, the nature, the ritual, like life is a ceremony. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily even need this medicine, at least not all the
Hmm.
time like that.
Hmm.
So I'm really glad you're talking about this. How does ritual and nature work as an integration tool? Like, how would this help
Hmm.
someone who's maybe one of these people on the mission to just do a lot of medicine and hope that it fixes them?
There's many ways that nature and ritual can weave into your life. I mean, say someone gets the insight to get more movement in their life, like they need to get more exercise. They get instant, yeah, I need to weave that into my life. Well, like going on a walk in nature, not only is it good for your body and your well-being, you're breathing fresh air, you're getting inspired by the beauty that you see around you. And even in those walks in nature, for example, like you can actually create a ritual of connection for yourself. Like that lone tree in the city, you can have a moment, like taking a moment and like, literally connecting your energy field with the earth or with a tree and making a prayer for your life. Or, if you're at your desk in your room, having your water, connecting with the elements and like having a ritual of connection with the water that's always listening, and saying a blessing or a prayer before you drink the water. There's so many little ways, we can integrate ritual into our life. I personally love having an altar space that before I take off to, go run an errand, like I have a moment at the altar to just set my intention for the day, like every morning, light a little cedar and just have a moment of connection with what is it that I'm wanting to feel today and what is it that I'm needing to like, accomplish. And so, yeah, it helps get clarity, helps bring connection, helps bring presence into our life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you said, it could be so small and so simple. Because I've run into this with clients that feel this need to go through this whole ordeal of like, 30 minutes of breath work and 20 minutes of meditation. And I'm like, look, like it's not about kind of just re-traumatizing yourself with that same paradigm of like working really hard and beating yourself up to the point where you don't enjoy it. It's like these tiny little things.
Mm.
And I always tell people you can just train yourself, like the first thing I do out of bed. It's like
Mm-hmm.
acknowledgement of the water, acknowledgement of the morning sun, acknowledgement of the breath. And like there's a little
Mm.
altar by my bedside. It's just like one cloth with like two or three little things that mean so much, and then it's like pay
Yeah.
attention to the rising sun. But
Yeah.
you mentioned it, presence. Like our world is really there's so many people just distracted and moving so fast and running on to the next thing, and
Mhm.
they're wondering why they're upset and why they're struggling with this and that, anxiety and depression and so on.
Mhm.
um but I want to hear a little bit about this recovery. Is
Mhm.
that recovery, are we talking recovery from alcohol, drugs, kind of addiction
Mhm.
recovery, or
Yeah.
and how did you get connected to that work?
Yeah. So I'm talking about addiction recovery, which every one of us has some connection with, whether it's ourselves or our family members. And I'm talking also substance as well as behavioral addiction. So in the last 8 years, I had some real close, deep experience of that with my beloved, who ended up getting deeply entrenched with substance addiction, just working in the medical system, stressing his body out, working night shifts and as a nurse. And, there's readily available legal substances out there that you can become addicted to. And they're some of the most harmful, like the pharmaceuticals. And yeah, so it's just something that was definitely part of my karma to address even in my own being, because it's been in my family lineage. And so through that process, I decided to really dive deep into understanding the nature of addiction and how to actually support someone in addiction. Initially, as it was, I was being confronted with it, the reality of what was happening. It's like I had a lot of trauma come up around it, and that wasn't helping. Like responding or reacting from a place of trauma, it usually puts a person into more shame, who is struggling. And yeah, so what's needed is just so much understanding and compassion that it's a deep struggle. And so I ended up going to Costa Rica with him. We attended an Iboga retreat out there together. And so we had 2 ceremonies with the Iboga medicine, which was life changing for him and really insightful for me as well. And after that so this was like 4 years ago or so. I ended up doing a training for addiction recovery and integration. This was through Being True to You. And so that's where I learned deeply about the nature of addiction and, you know, so many things. But basically, it was a huge healing for me to actually come full circle and like meet him in a way that actually was able to support him through it. And now I'm so grateful to say he's like on such a good path. We've parted ways, but it's like he's so deeply like with the medicine path now and has found more of his purpose. And for my own struggle, was deeply in the codependency patterning of, yeah, and I'm still working with it. And I think that's a thing to just name, that like people who struggle with addiction, it's something that we're always working with. And that's why these practices are really crucial, to like have the rituals of connection, to make sure we're having, we have community and resilience, with like having friends that we can turn to. And there's so much I can say about this, but it's been a huge piece of my own healing is in addressing this. And so I've, as of lately, been feeling really passionate about working with other women who struggle with codependency, because it's so much more common and not talked about as I feel as much as it could be talked about.
Please, 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 please do this. This
Yeah.
is it. Yeah. And you said it. It's like pretty much everyone out there. I mean, I couldn't name one human being that I'm connected to that doesn't have some form of addiction in
Mm,
their life, whether it's through a lineage or themselves or, family. And these days I'm convinced that everybody's addicted to something.
right.
And something I've been exploring, it's kind of like the codependency, like these, yeah, exactly that. There's definitely that, the phone, the social media, the whatever. But the one that's come up for me a lot lately is just this, like these kind of silent addictions that are like the shame or the not spoken about, like
Hmm.
codependency, trauma patterns that keep running our lives. It's like
Yeah.
it is a form of addiction, especially when people have an awareness. That's what, because I went through that where I was like, wait a
Yes.
second, I'm aware of what my pattern is and why it keeps repeating, but I can't seem to stop it. It's like,
Right.
I use the words of Joe Dispenza when he says it's like we get addicted to ourselves, like this kind of old version of ourselves, and we have to break that habit. He calls it breaking the habit of being yourself. But
Right.
addiction to struggle, addiction
Hmm.
to things being hard,
Mm.
there's so much programming that I'm like, wait a second, there's
Hmm.
so many different forms of addictions that we're
Mm.
not discussing, and people are just like brushing under the rug or avoiding or just whatever it is, writing it off as
Yeah.
like, oh, this is normal, everybody has something. It's like, well, do you want to be free from it or do you want to just perpetuate it?
That's right. And I'm
It's,
glad you named that topic of just like the secrecy. And,
oh yeah.
it's because that's the nature of addiction. It's something, when you become aware of it, you hide it, because it's something that, like, it's a shadow. It's something that you don't want people to know. And so the nature of addiction is, and why it's so harmful for the people who are connected, family members, is because essentially it's being hidden, and the person is seemingly being deceptive or lying, but it's because they're in such shame about it. And so that's
Mhm.
where like bringing the compassion and understanding around it is so important, and that can allow them the space to emerge and like be held in that, and not like so judge themselves so harshly
Yeah.
for it anymore,
Yeah.
and like bringing the awareness into that, that's number one key right there.
The
Yeah.
shame spiral that can just keep going down and down and down and down. I'm curious to hear about this because I know iboga is really just the master plan for this work. But I'm
Mm.
curious, have you worked with these patterns and this kind of addiction in let's say ayahuasca or mushroom work? I mean, is it do you think it's just as powerful or it can be?
I do. I think that all of these medicines have the power to like create this neuroplasticity and ability to, you know, stretch our minds out to see other possibilities, and feel into those new possibilities, like a felt sense of like, if I were to make these choices and feel into the new timelines of like possibility. But yet, even with iboga, like where it gives you that ultimate reset because of the way it acts, with all of the receptors, if you don't actually do the actions that are going to change your life, such as quitting the night shift job that's wrecking your body and chemistry, like you will probably end up back into the same patterning. You actually have to, there's no getting around doing the inner work. And that's where I like to emphasize, no matter what we take from the outside, it's never going to fix us. We actually have to do the work on our own and making the effort. And there's this quote I always think of: we earn our tranquility. We actually need to have the discipline and like to do the practices, to have a practice of some sort that's going to bring us back to our true self. And yeah, like having the accountability, it can be helpful to work with someone, a therapist or a coach, and to have someone to help clarify, like, what is it that's really important to you? What do you really want from your life? And like helping you to clarify those steps to get there and hold you in that process.
And you
Mhm.
said something so powerful that I said to someone the other day about this. I mean, it's come up so much around like so many people looking for these medicines to just fix them.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I heard, because I actually, the numerous stories I've seen, but someone I know in particular, it was like, oh, I heard iboga helps with this. Let me go do it. And then there was zero preparation and zero integration, and then just like fell right back in to the
Mhm.
same patterns like very quickly. And it's
Mhm.
sad because iboga is no joke. Like
Mhm.
it's not just like a little like taking a gram of mushrooms here. It's maybe going to Costa Rica and doing a week long retreat, 2 nights of whatever it is, 24 hours of
Yeah.
nonstop work, and it's no joke. So you
Yeah.
said it, like we can't run from the inner work, and
Mhm.
no external anything at all is going to be the fix.
Mhm.
It's interesting in the psychedelic space. It feels like there's like maybe it's the media over the years makes it sound like these are all just magic fixes. It's like ketamine, try ketamine therapy, it will
Right.
fix your PTSD. And I'm like,
Well, isn't
um,
that kind of the model that the Western medicine model, like take the pill and make that symptom go away? But what we're actually, these plant medicines have the ability to definitely open and help open our beings and like help us to purify and like help us in that process of healing. But it's not going to do the work for us. It's like the inner and the outer work that we need to do. But they're such helpful tools, but they need to be respected. I mean, if we keep just going back over and over and over again, but not doing the work ourselves, that's like not really respecting the medicine and what it's here, like the potential it has for us. So,
yeah, and that's where she'll just kick you in the butt, maybe.
yeah, and also it's not easy. People think like I'm gonna have like a amazing, they'll have these expectations in their head of like having some miraculous healing visionary experience, and it can often be one of the most confronting, uncomfortable experiences of your life, especially with iboga. Like oftentimes what people have in these journeys are like their most traumas kind of like on loudspeaker, like literally you can literally have like auditory hallucinations and like hear things based on like your own trauma. So it's like it's bringing it to the surface to like show you that it's there. And like how are you going to be with it? Are you gonna like be like, I don't want to, like continue to like not want to look at it? It's
Run.
like showing itself to you for your acceptance, actually, and like acknowledgement, just like any crying child wants to be loved and acknowledged.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, you said it. It's so important. I mean, it's so interesting with this world that we're in. I think so many people want the quick fix. And, even a friend today, we were like texting back and forth. And she's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. It's really hard. I was like, well, I was like, what have you been up to all these years? But it was, we were talking about the medicine. I was like, but
Mhm.
that's, to me, it's part of the point. It's like learning how to
Mm.
navigate and like be aware of the kind of hard, heavy stuff. That's it's not
Mm.
all unicorns and rainbows. I really
Mhm.
think it's here to be a teacher. We all have, every human, I would say, run from anybody who doesn't think they have problems or issues, or, they've, if anyone says they're fully healed, like, I would run, because I
Yeah,
haven't really met
that's a
anybody.
really good point, and I also
Yeah.
like to emphasize that to the clients. It's just like, that's not an end point. It's like we're
Yeah.
continually meeting, like, and shedding more and more layers. Yeah.
Nowhere to get to. Yeah, I say, I'm like, maybe like multiple lifetimes, but there's nowhere to get to.
And I also just want
So,
to like name that also in this healing work, the ceremonial work, there can be a lot of space for celebration as well. I mean, when
yeah.
you think about, some of the other places in the world where this work has been going on for thousands of years, and in with dance and music and like celebration and community involvement. And I think that's another really important piece of ceremonies and this work, is that it's community building, and it definitely provides resilience and something that hits deeply for people, for that need of ceremony. Like it's actually an ancestral thing. Like when people come to ceremony for the first time, it's like, I this is new to me, but it felt so familiar. Like it's, it hits a deep place in them, like of remembrance. Yeah.
You said it exactly. Yeah, speaking of which, I'm curious, it's so interesting to watch this world changing, I feel like, so quickly. What are your views on, kind of like the medicine space and the whole, like, especially in the Western world, there's so many different opinions on like who should be doing it, how we should be doing it, is this right or wrong?
Mm.
Especially you and I, both Westerners with white
Yeah.
skin, born and raised in
Mhm.
California. I've had people even say like you shouldn't even be talking about this, which I think is a little extreme. But how do you handle kind of this
Mm.
navigating this life and this space, being
Mm.
who you are, and
Mhm.
like hearing different opinions? And I'm curious, like, has anything come up around like, oh, you shouldn't be working with this, or I mean, I've literally had people say like this shouldn't even leave its homeland, which, by the way, it has a home in Hawaii as well.
That's
But
true.
yeah, I'm curious, like, what are your views on when this comes up?
Mm. Yeah. And this is a really sensitive topic. And for myself personally, um, I haven't had any direct experience of like being told that I shouldn't be doing this work. And I feel really blessed that for the people that I work with, and for instance, like the person I assist with in the ceremonies, that this person has, received a lot of blessings and permission from their teachers or indigenous elders to be doing this work. And that feels really in integrity and alignment. And for myself, we're like working with the mushrooms, for instance, like these things pop up all over the place,
Yeah.
and I really feel like mushrooms in particular are like, it's everybody's medicine. I mean, they grow in many, many places of the world, and in a way, I feel it's an ancestral medicine for myself. In the last several years, I actually started working with Amanita muscaria, which is like another amazing healing mushroom that for so long has been kind of under the shroud of misinformation for, considering it toxic. But this is like an ancestral medicine for me, being like my ancestors from Scandinavia. And so I feel very connected and in integrity, like, working with mushrooms in particular, and I view these medicines getting around the world for a reason, especially, like, with ayahuasca, the plants are starting to be grown in all of the tropical areas that can grow it because there's a need. There's a need. Humanity has a need for these medicines that are going to help awaken us and help us remember, like, what's really important, like, how do we live in right relationship, uh, helps us reconnect with nature, helps us see and feel the interconnection of everything, like that what we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. So there's a reason why these medicines are becoming more widely worked with in these times.
Yes, I agree completely. I mean, it's been an interesting space with so many people. I mean, it's not just this space, it's the world, right? Everybody has an opinion on something and everybody wants to tell you how to live their lives, and it's just part of how things go. But I do feel like there's something bigger at play here. And I always like to refer to when I last interviewed Rick Doblin last year, he had said, like, we need to keep our eyes on this larger picture here. Like, yes, there might be some harm, or yes, there might be, some communities being affected. But if we think of this entire planet, it's like 8 billion people, and the relationship, we're kind of in this kind of disharmony with the earth, and so many people in disharmony with themselves. It's like, well, what if these medicines help us remember and bring us back and reconnect us? And like you said, it's like the addiction, the codependency, all these patterns, it's all interconnected. The more disconnected we are and the more we are, just running these patterns. But what if these medicines could actually help us in this greater vision of a transformed planet? And as I spent probably an hour straight crying my eyes out during a TP ceremony I was in over the weekend, I was like, I'm still optimistic. So many people are just feeling so doom and gloom right now, but I tend to be optimistic about the potential. I'm curious, do you feel, especially, I don't know about you, but working with the bees, there are times where it's like, oh my God, it's heartbreaking. Like, I really get like, oh, this is it. This just shows how bad things are. Is like, even like the days I see, I don't know, a bee that's been affected by pesticides or whatever it is. But do you remain optimistic about the planet and the direction we're going? And how do you keep your positivity, or like through the hard times, or do you?
Wow, that has a lot of dimensions to this. The bees definitely teach me about unity and how, they're like a mirror for us as humans and like living on the planet Gaia, because the bees are a super organism. Like the bees are a hive and they exist as they can't exist independently. So yeah, I think I definitely have waves of grief. I feel like grieving is a very essential piece that we have to allow the space for in our lives, because there is a lot of loss going on and a lot of deeply saddening things happening in the world. And and yet there's always the reminder that all of this is temporary. And I do believe that whether humans figure this out or not, and whether we have the chance and the time to repair the damage we've caused, where the earth the earth will heal. I do have that prayer, and I feel pretty confident in that, and I trust in this divine plan unfolding. Honestly, I think that this is all it's all a big ceremony, and yeah, it's coming to a place where um there is a lot of awakening happening on the planet. And yes, there's the full spectrum. Like we're witness to it all right now. And yeah, and I think the more that we can come back into presence so that we aren't completely derailed, and when we were witness to all of this, it can be very derailing, like we could easily just go down into a well of despair. But we also need to use what power we have, with the freedoms that we have, to make a positive impact in the world. So back to the bees, it's like we have a part to play, in each and every one of us have a part to play in this whole. And um it can take a lot of deconditioning and unlearning to figure out what we're here for, each and every one of us. But I I just have faith in in life and the cycles of life, which that's true. We see things are birthed and things die, and this is like a fleeting moment in like the cosmic sea of reality. And so what beautiful impact can we make in the life that we have? Just focusing on that is a good way to live our life. Is just like knowing that we can make a difference with our
Mm,
one life.
beautiful. Yeah, I always say it's like planting your seed. That's all we can do. I don't think one person's going to save the entire planet themselves. We're all in this together. And yeah, the more I've studied the bees and been with the bees, it's like, wait a second, if we could just learn everything that they're doing, apply this to humanity, we might get it right. Like you said. I know.
Yeah, they're in
Yeah.
service to life.
Yeah.
They're literally their existence is all about being in service to life.
They're so beautiful. I'm curious, do you keep bees where you live now? Are they in Hawaii, or do you just,
I don't have any hives
mm,
of my own because I move
yeah.
around so much. I'll be going back to Hawaii in October for another one of these women's intuitive beekeeping retreats, and 3 of the beekeepers that are a part of this retreat, they all have their own land that have hives. So when we do these retreats, we're getting to visit these hives and spend close time with the bees, with suits on for those that don't feel comfortable, like not wearing a suit. And not only being with the bees, but like really doing some deep kind of priestess practices, ancient practices related with like the Melissa, and so I don't have them of my own though, to answer that question. One day, if I am settled long enough, I would love to have my own
That
bees.
sounds amazing though, this retreat, because I've been studying, getting a little more into that, like understanding the lineage of the European shamanism with the Melissa and the bees and the priestesses. And yeah, I also too have been practicing not being in a suit. I went in fully and like took out a frame of honey over the weekend, and that I was like, okay, I'm wearing a suit. Like the day I got stung, I was in shorts and a tank top, and but they're so beautiful, and I'm so glad you're doing this work. I feel like there's so much for people to learn, and they are the most gentle creatures. Like usually when I get stung, it's like kind of just an accident. They get stuck.
Mhm,
But
exactly.
let's hear
Yeah.
about more about what you have coming up. Do you have anything planned in the next few months, or anything you want to shout out that you're offering?
Gosh, we're coming into summer now. I actually have a lot of travels coming up, so I don't have too many offerings in the next couple months, but I'm envisioning by the fall, like maybe around November time, um, bringing this, like a transformational container, a 3 month container for women, to really just go deep and get support from each other and work through a lot of these like codependency issues together through our voices, through movement, through ritual with nature. So I'm dreaming into being that program, just an integrative container. And I have a lot of free resources on my websites for people new to this work. Like I've got integration guides and microdosing guides and how to create and keep an altar, all these good things. So if you go to my website, you can just learn more about that kind of stuff.
Great. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
have it right here in the show notes, and we'll put all the links so people can follow you and get updates. I know you send emails, so get on her list and be updated about this women's program coming up hopefully in the fall. But Mary, that's amazing. Where are you off to next in your travels? Anywhere good?
Heading to Chicago, for the summer solstice for a retreat out there that I'm doing with my friend. Really excited about
Sweet.
that.
Aw, beautiful. Well, it was so good to finally connect with you and have you on. This work is so important. I'm so glad you're doing it. I mean, the addiction, the recovery, the codependency work, the song as medicine, your voice as medicine. It's honestly, it's like I've been saying it for years. This is some of the most powerful work that I think anybody can be doing, and I actually believe it's kind of the next. I mean, it's so funny to say that it's the future. It's ancient. It's the future, but I think it's going to be the next big healing tool that people are finally going to wake up and realize, like, wow, it's within. I just need to learn, just put the practice in. So thank you so much for sharing your voice and coming on here and sharing your story with everyone.
Thank you so much for having this. Yes.